My spouse claimed the gym was her stress relief, so I decided to join her for a workout session, and when I walked into the address my wife had given me for her gym, I found myself standing in an industrial warehouse with blacked-out windows, the smell of bleach burning my nostrils, and the sound of slot machines echoing off concrete walls. There was no workout equipment anywhere. Instead, I saw rows of elderly people sitting at makeshift computer stations, my wife standing in the center wearing a headset, shouting instructions in Mandarin to a room full of senior citizens who were clearly being coached to run some kind of phone scam. She turned, saw me standing in the doorway with my gym bag, and her face went completely white. For 3 seconds, we just stared at each other across a room full of illegal activity. Then she screamed, "Security! We have a breach!" And 2 men I'd never seen before started moving toward me. I ran. I've been married to Rebecca for 13 years. We met when I was 31, working as an accountant for a mid-sized manufacturing company in Denver. She was a project manager at a software firm, intelligent, driven, fluent in 3 languages, including Mandarin from her time studying abroad in college. We dated for 2 years before I proposed during a camping trip in Rocky Mountain National Park. Life was stable, comfortable, predictable. We bought a house in Lakewood, had 1 son together named Ethan, who was now 10 years old. I made $85,000 a year. Rebecca made $72,000. We lived within our means, saved for retirement, took family vacations to national parks. I thought we had built something solid, something honest. I had no idea my wife was living a completely double life. 6 months ago, Rebecca announced she was joining a gym. It came out of nowhere during dinner on a Wednesday evening. I was helping Ethan with his science homework when she said, "I need to start taking better care of myself. Work stress is killing me, and I've gained 15 pounds this year. I'm joining a gym." I looked up from Ethan's worksheet about plant cells, surprised but supportive. "That's great," I said. "Which gym are you thinking?" "There's a place near my office, FitCore Athletic Center. I can go during lunch or right after work before traffic gets bad. It'll help me decompress." "Sounds perfect. Do you want me to join with you? Make it a couples thing?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I need this to be my time, my space to clear my head without thinking about family or work obligations. Just me and the workout. I need that separation to really de-stress." I understood completely. Everyone needs their own outlets, their own space. I had my weekend hiking. She'd have her gym time. It seemed healthy, balanced, mature. Rebecca started going to the gym 4 times a week. Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. She'd leave the house at 6 in the morning for the weekday sessions, return by 8:30 before work. Saturdays, she'd go mid-morning, be gone for about 3 hours total. She came home energized, glowing, talking about how much better she felt, how the endorphins were changing her mood, how she was finally taking control of her health. I was proud of her. She did seem happier, more relaxed, less irritable about work frustrations. The gym was clearly helping, except for small things that didn't quite add up. After 2 months of regular gym attendance, Rebecca didn't look any different physically. No weight loss, no visible muscle tone, no change in her appearance at all. When I mentioned it gently, she explained that she was doing mostly cardio and flexibility work, focusing on stress relief rather than body transformation. That made sense. Not everyone goes to the gym for aesthetic changes. The first strange thing happened 3 months in. I was doing laundry on a Saturday afternoon and found Rebecca's gym clothes from that morning's session. The tank top and leggings were barely damp, no real sweat stains, and they didn't smell like someone who'd just finished a 3-hour workout. They smelled faintly of perfume and something else, something chemical I couldn't place. I held the clothes up to my nose, confused. Rebecca had left the house at 9 that morning, returned at noon, claimed she'd done an intense spin class followed by yoga. But these clothes suggested maybe 20 minutes of light activity, not 3 hours of serious exercise. I told myself maybe she'd change clothes at the gym. Maybe these were what she wore driving there and back. I put them in the wash and tried not to think about it, but the thought lingered, uncomfortable and insistent. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. The second strange thing was 2 weeks later. Our credit card statement arrived with a charge I didn't recognize. Summit Health and Wellness, $129 recurring monthly charge. I looked at previous statements. The charge had been appearing for 3 months since Rebecca joined the gym, but she'd told me FitCore Athletic Center cost $45 per month. Budget-friendly, she'd said. Nothing fancy. $129 was nearly triple that amount. I asked her about it that evening while she was making dinner. "Hey, I noticed a charge on the card for Summit Health and Wellness. Is that your gym?" She didn't even pause chopping vegetables. "Oh yeah, I upgraded my membership. They had a premium tier with better classes, personal training options, spa access. I should have mentioned it, sorry, but $129 versus $45 is a big jump. We should have discussed it first. You're right, I'm sorry. I just got excited about the upgrade and signed up impulsively. Is it a problem? We could barely afford it, but I didn't want to be controlling or make her feel guilty about investing in her health. No, it's fine. Just communicate next time, okay? I will, I promise." But the explanation bothered me. Rebecca wasn't impulsive with money. She was meticulous, careful, always consulted me about purchases over $50. Signing up for a membership nearly 3 times more expensive without discussion was completely out of character. I logged into our credit card account that night after she went to bed and searched for the charge. Summit Health and Wellness had no website I could find, no Google results for any gym or wellness center by that name in Denver, no Yelp reviews, no social media presence. It was like the business didn't exist outside of that monthly charge. I felt my stomach tighten. Why would Rebecca be paying over $100 a month to a business that had no online footprint? I told myself maybe it was a small exclusive gym that didn't advertise. Maybe they valued privacy, catered to high-end clients who didn't want publicity. I wanted to believe that. But doubt had planted itself and was growing. The third strange thing happened 3 weeks after that. Ethan had a school event on a Thursday evening, parent-teacher conferences at 6:30. Rebecca had gym that morning but promised she'd be back in time for the conference. At 6:15, she still wasn't home. I called her cell. No answer. Called again at 6:20. Voicemail. At 6:25, I texted, "Where are you? Conference starts in 5 minutes." No response. I ended up going alone, making excuses to Ethan's teacher about Rebecca being held up at work. She finally walked in at 7:45, apologizing profusely. "I'm so sorry," she said, breathless. "My phone died at the gym and I lost track of time. I stayed for an extra class and didn't realize how late it was." "Your phone was dead for over an hour?" "I forgot my charger. I'm really sorry. Did I miss the conference?" "You missed everything. Ethan was asking for you." Her face fell, genuine regret showing. "I'll make it up to him. I'll take him for ice cream this weekend, spend some quality time with him." But later that night, after Ethan was asleep, I checked the Find My iPhone app we'd set up years ago for family location sharing. Rebecca's phone had been active all evening. It showed her location as somewhere in Commerce City, an industrial area north of Denver, not near any gym I knew of. The phone had been on, pinging location data every few minutes. She'd lied about the dead battery, which meant she'd lied about losing track of time, which meant she'd deliberately skipped Ethan's conference. Why? What was more important than our son's school event? What was she really doing during those gym sessions? I stared at the location pin on the map, my heart pounding. The building was listed as an industrial warehouse, no business name attached. I took a screenshot, saved it to a hidden folder on my phone. Over the next 2 weeks, I started tracking Rebecca's movements through Find My iPhone every time she went to the gym. The pattern was consistent and damning. She never went to any gym. The weekday morning sessions showed her at that same warehouse in Commerce City for exactly 2.5 hours. The Saturday sessions were 3 hours at the same location. Whatever Summit Health and Wellness was, it wasn't a gym. It was something happening in an industrial warehouse that required 4 visits per week and cost $129 monthly. I felt sick. The obvious assumption was an affair, secret meetings with someone at that location. But why would an affair require such a rigid schedule? Why would it cost money? Nothing made sense. I needed to see for myself what was happening in that warehouse. I needed the truth, whatever it was. I took a personal day from work on the following Thursday, told Rebecca I had a dental appointment. She left for the gym at 6 as usual. I waited 15 minutes, then drove to Commerce City, parking across the street from the warehouse at 6:43. The building was nondescript, gray concrete, no signs, no identifying markers. 3 cars were parked in the lot, including Rebecca's silver Subaru Outback. I watched the entrance, waiting for something to happen, some clue about what was inside. At 7:15, an elderly Asian woman walked in carrying a large handbag. 10 minutes later, an elderly man followed. By 8 o'clock, 7 elderly people had entered the building. None of them looked like they were there for a workout or an affair. They looked like they were reporting for work. At 8:30, Rebecca emerged, alone, looking relaxed. She got in her car and drove away. I sat there for another 20 minutes, confused and unsettled. What kind of operation required elderly workers and secret warehouse meetings? What was my wife involved in? I couldn't confront her without more information. If I asked directly, she'd lie like she'd been lying for months. I needed evidence, proof of whatever was happening in that warehouse. I needed help. That afternoon, I contacted a private investigator named Douglas Ramsey. Ramsey Investigations, former Colorado State Police detective, 21 years of experience, specializing in surveillance and corporate fraud cases. I met him at his office in downtown Denver the next day. "Mr. Garrett," he said, shaking my hand, "what can I help you with? My wife has been lying about going to the gym. She's actually spending hours at a warehouse in Commerce City multiple times per week. I need to know what she's doing there." I showed him the Find My iPhone screenshots, the credit card statements, the warehouse address. He studied the information carefully. "This warehouse," he said, tapping the address. "I know this area. Lots of questionable businesses operate out of Commerce City warehouses, storage facilities, import-export operations, sometimes less legitimate enterprises. What do you think she's involved in? Could be anything. Affair is possible but doesn't fit the pattern. Could be she's working a second job, running a side business, or involved in something illegal. I can do surveillance, document who comes and goes, see if I can determine what's happening inside. How much? $2,000 for a week of surveillance, plus expenses, equipment, mileage, documentation. I'll give you a full report with photos, video if possible, and my professional assessment." I wired him the money that afternoon. Douglas started surveillance Monday morning. He called me Wednesday evening at 6:30. Mr. Garrett, we need to meet. Tonight. His tone made my stomach drop. I met him at a coffee shop in Littleton at 8 o'clock. He slid a folder across the table, his expression grim. Your wife is running a scam operation. Specifically, she's operating what looks like a tech support fraud call center targeting elderly Americans. My hands went cold. What? I've been monitoring the warehouse for 3 days. Here's what I observed. He opened the folder, showing me surveillance photos. Elderly individuals entering and exiting the building at scheduled times. Windows blacked out from the inside. Equipment being delivered, including computers, phones, headsets. And this morning, I managed to position a directional microphone near a ventilation opening. I recorded audio of what's happening inside. He pulled out a small digital recorder, pressed play. I heard voices speaking in Mandarin, then Rebecca's voice, clear and commanding, speaking English with occasional Mandarin phrases mixed in. Remember, you're calling from Microsoft. Your target is 78 years old, lives alone, computer illiterate. Be patient, build trust, then tell them their computer has a virus. Walk them through downloading remote access software. Once you have control, lock their files and demand $500 for the unlock code. If they resist, cry, tell them you're trying to help, make them feel guilty for not trusting you. Another voice, elderly, heavily accented, responded, "What if they hang up?" Rebecca answered, "Call back from a different number. Use the scripts. We've got 15 numbers rotating. They'll answer eventually. We made $8,000 yesterday. Today we're aiming for 10,000. Everyone needs to hit their quotas." I felt like I was going to vomit. Douglas stopped the recording. Your wife is running an elder fraud operation using elderly workers to scam other elderly Americans. It's brilliant in a sick way. The workers sound sympathetic, authentic, because they are elderly. Victims trust them. The Mandarin-speaking workers handle Asian American targets. Your wife manages it all, coordinates the operation, probably takes the bulk of the profits. This is serious federal crime, Mr. Garrett. Wire fraud, conspiracy, elderly exploitation. We're talking years in federal prison if prosecuted. How long has this been going on? Based on the credit card charges, at least 6 months, possibly longer. She could have made hundreds of thousands of dollars. I sat there, trying to process it. My wife, the woman I'd been married to for 13 years, the mother of my child, was running a criminal scam operation targeting vulnerable elderly people, using other elderly people as unwitting accomplices, operating out of a warehouse while I thought she was at the gym working out. What do? You document everything, then you go to the FBI. This is their jurisdiction. Wire fraud, interstate crime, they'll want this case. You also get a divorce lawyer immediately and protect yourself financially and legally. If any of that money touched your joint accounts, you could be implicated. But first, you need more evidence. Solid, undeniable proof. I can get that. How? I'm going in there tomorrow with a hidden camera. I'll pose as a potential client looking to invest in the operation. If your wife thinks I'm a business partner, she'll show me everything, explain the whole setup. That's risky. She might recognize you helped hire me. I'll wear a disguise, change my appearance. I've done this hundreds of times. But I need your permission because it could accelerate the situation. If she realizes it's surveillance, she might disappear, destroy evidence, flee. Do it. I need to know the full scope of what she's built. Douglas went into the warehouse Friday morning at 9:30, wearing a hidden camera in his jacket button. He had a fake identity as a businessman interested in call center operations. I watched the footage later that evening, and it was worse than I imagined. Rebecca gave him a complete tour. The warehouse had been divided into sections. One area with 40 computer stations where elderly workers sat making calls from scripts. Another area with filing cabinets full of victim information including names, ages, phone numbers, financial details. A third section had servers and recording equipment for tracking calls and storing victim data. Rebecca explained the operation proudly, like she was giving a legitimate business presentation. We run 2 shifts, she told Douglas. Morning shift is elderly Asian workers targeting Asian American victims. Afternoon shift is elderly white workers targeting general American population. We use fear tactics, authority impersonation, and emotional manipulation. Average profit per successful scam is $800. We run approximately 30 successful scams per week. That's 24,000 weekly, nearly 100,000 monthly. Douglas asked about the workers. Where do you find them? Rebecca smiled. Immigrant community centers, senior centers, people struggling financially who need extra income. I tell them it's legitimate tech support work. They don't realize they're scamming people until they're already involved, and by then, they're complicit. Most are too scared to quit or report it. Some don't fully understand what they're doing because of language barriers. It's perfect. Douglas asked about law enforcement risk. Aren't you worried about getting caught? Rebecca shook her head confidently. We use VoIP numbers that rotate constantly, overseas servers for data storage, cash payments to workers, so there's no paper trail. Victims rarely report because they're embarrassed. Even if they do report, tracing it back to us is nearly impossible. I've been doing this for 18 months with 0 issues. I've made over $1.3 million personally. My stomach dropped. $1.3 million. Where was that money? Not in our joint accounts. I would have noticed large deposits. She had to be hiding it somewhere. If this story keeps your interest, Please subscribe to get more stories like this. Douglas wrapped up the meeting, told Rebecca he'd think about investing, and left with hours of incriminating footage. He met me that evening, his expression dark. Your wife is a criminal mastermind running a sophisticated fraud operation. She's made over $1 million exploiting vulnerable elderly people. She's employing other elderly individuals as unwitting accomplices, manipulating them through fear and language barriers. This is as bad as it gets. What do I do now? Tomorrow morning, we go to the FBI. I'll provide all the evidence: surveillance footage, audio recordings, documentation. They'll open an investigation immediately. You also need to contact a lawyer tonight. I called Alexander Novak that evening. Novak, Chen and Associates, family law and criminal defense, practicing in Colorado for 17 years. I explained everything in his office Saturday morning. Mr. Garrett, your wife has committed multiple federal felonies: wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, elderly exploitation. You need to separate yourself legally and financially immediately. We'll file for emergency divorce, freeze all joint assets, and cooperate fully with federal investigators to prove you had no knowledge or involvement in her crimes. How bad is this for her? If convicted on all charges, she's looking at 20 years minimum in federal prison, possibly up to 35 years, depending on victim impact and restitution amounts. The $1.3 million in proceeds will be seized. She'll lose everything. What about Ethan? Full custody to you. No judge will grant custody to someone serving time in federal prison for defrauding elderly people. She'll have limited supervised visitation at best. File the paperwork today. I'm also contacting the FBI to arrange a meeting for Monday morning. Monday at 9 o'clock, I sat in a conference room at the FBI Denver field office with Alexander, Douglas, and Special Agent Kimberly Torres, White Collar Crime Division, 13 years with the Bureau. Agent Torres listened to our presentation without interrupting. We showed her everything: the surveillance footage of Rebecca giving the warehouse tour, audio recordings of her coaching scammers, documentation of the credit card charges and warehouse location, victim information we'd photographed from Douglas's hidden camera. When we finished, Agent Torres leaned back in her chair. This is a significant case. Elder fraud is a priority for the Bureau, and what your wife has built is one of the more sophisticated operations I've seen. We'll open a full investigation immediately. We'll need your cooperation, Mr. Garrett. Full access to financial records, testimony about her activities, anything that helps us build the case. I'll cooperate completely. I had no idea this was happening. We believe you. The evidence suggests she compartmentalized this operation completely, kept it separate from her legitimate life. That's common in fraud cases. People live double lives successfully for years. What happens next? We execute search warrants on the warehouse and your home, seize all computers, phones, financial records, and documents. We'll interview the elderly workers, determine who was complicit and who was exploited. We'll trace the money, identify victims, calculate restitution. Then we'll arrest your wife and charge her federally. How long until the arrest? We move fast on cases like this. Evidence could be destroyed. Suspects could flee. I'd estimate 48 to 72 hours. I went home that afternoon feeling numb. Rebecca was in the kitchen making lunch, cheerful, completely unaware that her entire operation was about to collapse. "Hey," she said, smiling. "How was your morning?" "I went hiking." I lied. Needed to clear my head. She kissed my cheek. "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." "I went to the gym this morning. Had a great session. Want to grab lunch together?" I forced a smile. "Sure." We ate sandwiches at the kitchen table while Ethan played video games in the living room. Rebecca talked about maybe taking a family vacation next month, somewhere warm, maybe Florida. I nodded along, knowing she'd be in federal custody within days, knowing our family was about to implode completely. That night, I moved important documents to my brother's house: birth certificates, passports, financial records I'd need for the divorce. I prepared Ethan for the possibility that things were about to change, though I didn't explain why. I just told him Mom and Dad were having some grown-up problems, and he might need to stay with Uncle David for a few days. He asked if we were getting divorced. I said maybe, and watched his face crumple. 41 hours after my FBI meeting, at 2:15 on Wednesday afternoon, Agent Torres called. "We're executing the warrants now. The warehouse is being raided. Your home will be searched within the hour." "Where's your wife?" "She's at the warehouse. It's one of her scheduled days." Agent Torres's voice was grim. "Then she's about to be arrested. I'm sending officers to pick up you and your son. You'll need to be out of the house during the search." I called my brother, told him to pick up Ethan from school immediately, take him to his house, keep him there until I arrived. I left work, drove home, and saw 3 FBI vehicles parked in my driveway. Agents were carrying boxes out of the house, loading them into vans. Agent Torres met me at the door. "We found 3 burner phones hidden in your wife's closet, 2 laptops with encrypted data, and a safe containing $83,000 in cash. Your wife is in custody at the warehouse. She tried to run when we entered, but we had the exits covered. She's being transported to the detention center for processing." I watched them dismantle my house, searching every room, photographing everything, treating my home like a crime scene. Because it was. My wife had been running a criminal enterprise while living a completely normal suburban family life. At 4:30, they finished. Agent Torres handed me a receipt for everything they'd seized. "We'll be in touch about next steps. Your attorney has my contact information. I suggest you stay somewhere else tonight. Your wife will make bail eventually and she'll come home. You don't want to be here when that happens. I went to my brother's house, found Ethan crying in the guest room. Dad, what's happening? Why did the police take Mom? I sat on the bed next to him, put my arm around his shoulders. Mom made some very bad choices. She hurt people and broke the law. She's going to have to face consequences. Is she going to jail? Probably, yeah. For how long? I don't know, buddy. Maybe a long time. He buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed. The local news ran the story that evening. FBI raids Commerce City warehouse, arrests woman in major elder fraud scheme. The reporter stood outside the warehouse describing the operation. Dozens of elderly workers, sophisticated phone scam targeting vulnerable Americans, over $1 million in fraudulent proceeds. Rebecca's name and photo appeared on screen. My phone started ringing immediately. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, everyone calling to ask if it was true, if my wife was really the woman arrested for scamming elderly people. I stopped answering after the 10th call. The arraignment happened Friday morning. Rebecca appeared in federal court before Magistrate Judge Lawrence Brennan, presiding over the District of Colorado for 9 years. The charges were read: 18 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, elderly financial exploitation. Maximum exposure, 35 years in federal prison. Bail was set at $250,000. Rebecca's parents posted it using their house as collateral. She was released with electronic monitoring and travel restrictions. She came home that evening. I was there with Alexander, had already moved most of my and Ethan's belongings to my brother's house. Rebecca walked in wearing the same clothes she'd been arrested in, looking exhausted and defeated. She saw me standing in the living room with my attorney and stopped. Mark, I can explain. There's nothing to explain. I know everything. The warehouse, the scam, the elderly workers, the $1.3 million. The FBI has all the evidence. I didn't want you to find out this way. You didn't want me to find out at all. You were going to keep lying, keep scamming vulnerable people, keep living your double life indefinitely. She stepped toward me. Please, let me explain why I did it. I don't care why. I care that you did it. You exploited elderly people, you manipulated workers, you built a criminal empire, and you lied to me and our son for 18 months. Alexander cleared his throat. Mrs. Garrett, I'm Alexander Novak, your husband's attorney. I'm serving you with divorce papers. We're seeking full custody of Ethan, division of legitimate marital assets, and restraining order preventing you from accessing joint accounts. Rebecca stared at the papers, then at me. You're divorcing me. Of course I'm divorcing you. You're a criminal. Our marriage was based on lies. You put our family at risk, exposed Ethan to your illegal activities, and destroyed any trust I ever had in you. Mark, please. I made mistakes, but I did this for us, to give us a better life. You did this for yourself. You made over $1 million and hid every penny. You didn't do this for our family. You did this because you're greedy and don't care who you hurt. She started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she'd probably used on countless victims. I'm sorry. I know I can't fix this, but I'm sorry. Your sorry means nothing to the people you scammed, to the workers you exploited, to our son whose mother is going to federal prison. I want you out of this house tonight. This is my house too. Not anymore. Alexander filed an emergency motion. Judge approved it an hour ago. You have until 9 o'clock tonight to remove your personal items. After that, you're trespassing. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. She looked at Alexander, then back at me, realizing this was really happening. Can I at least say goodbye to Ethan? No. He doesn't want to see you. You've hurt him enough. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I walked out, drove to my brother's house, and hugged my son until he fell asleep. The federal trial took 14 months. Rebecca hired expensive attorneys with money from her parents, attempted to negotiate plea deals, tried to argue she was providing legitimate employment to elderly workers, claimed the victims weren't really harmed because most were wealthy enough to absorb the losses. None of it worked. Assistant U.S. Attorney Diana Sterling, prosecuting financial crimes for 11 years, presented devastating evidence. Testimony from 38 victims, elderly Americans who'd lost anywhere from $500 to $12,000, to Rebecca's scammers. Many testified through tears, describing the fear and humiliation of being manipulated, the financial devastation of losing their savings, the emotional trauma of realizing they'd been targeted because of their age and vulnerability. The elderly workers testified too, explaining how Rebecca had recruited them under false pretenses, threatened them when they wanted to quit, paid them cash to avoid paper trails. The surveillance footage showed Rebecca proudly explaining her operation, describing her victims as targets, bragging about her profits. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all 18 counts. The sentencing hearing happened 3 weeks later. Judge Margaret Sutherland, Federal District Court, 16 years on the bench, known for harsh sentences in fraud cases. Rebecca stood before the judge, her attorneys having prepared a statement about remorse and accepting responsibility. Judge Sutherland listened, then responded, Mrs. Garrett, what you did was predatory, calculated, and cruel. You identified the most vulnerable members of our society and exploited them for personal profit. You manipulated elderly workers, many of whom were immigrants struggling financially, and turned them into unwitting accomplices in your schemes. You showed no remorse until you were caught. You lived a double life, deceiving your husband and child while running a criminal enterprise. The victims in this case deserve justice. I'm sentencing you to 23 years in federal prison with credit for time served. You will pay full restitution of $1.4 million to victims, and you are permanently banned from any position involving financial transactions or vulnerable populations. I hope you spend your time in prison reflecting on the lives you've destroyed. Rebecca collapsed. The bailiffs had to physically support her as they led her away. I sat in the gallery with Ethan, now 12 years old, watching his mother disappear into federal custody. He didn't cry. He'd cried all his tears over the past year. Now he just looked tired. The divorce finalized 2 months later. I got full custody. Rebecca got supervised visitation once per month when she'd eventually be transferred to a facility that allowed it. The marital assets were divided. I kept the house, the cars, the legitimate bank accounts. Rebecca's seized criminal proceeds went to victim restitution, though $1.4 million wasn't enough to fully compensate everyone she'd scammed. Some victims would never recover financially or emotionally from what she'd done. 3 years after everything collapsed, Ethan and I had built a new life. We'd moved to Fort Collins, fresh start away from Denver and all the memories. Ethan was doing well in high school, seeing a therapist regularly to process his mother's crimes and abandonment. He wrote to her occasionally, brief letters describing his life, but she rarely responded. Prison had broken something in her that even letters to her son couldn't repair. I'd started dating again, met someone kind and honest who worked as a teacher and had no criminal history. We took things slow, made sure Ethan was comfortable with changes, built something stable and real. I thought about that morning walking into the warehouse expecting a gym and finding a criminal operation. How one moment of curiosity, one decision to verify my wife's lies, had exposed an entire fraudulent empire. How easily she'd deceived me for 18 months. How completely she'd compartmentalized her criminal life from our family life. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.